I am still trying to calm down from going off on poor SEC scheduling. It's been going on now for 30 years, how that league cannot schedule. All right, we're talking Ohio State football here. Appreciate you all stopping by. And we talk it up, of course, each and every Wednesday with Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Huddle. Buckeye Weekly is the podcast that you need to lock in on. Steve Hellwagon, senior Big Ten writer there at 247 Sports Bucknuts. So we will check in with Tony first and foremost on the quarterback situation because, of course, there is a press conference on a Thursday, and there is some anticipation as to it being a good time in which in the past there has been a starter named at this point. So this could be the day.
Could be the day. We will see. When we talked to Brian Day after the first practice back on the 1st of August, he said that he'd like to have somebody named within 7 to 10 days, or within those 2 weeks. And then you look at the schedule that we have with them, and you go out 2 weeks later from that day, and you're looking at the possibility of Ryan Day naming a starter. Now, we haven't seen anything from since Thursday, but last Thursday, Will Howard took all of the first team reps that we saw. Chip Kelly and Ryan Day both said don't read into any of that. But of course, when it's just one guy taking reps with the ones, I'm not sure you can read into anything other than the fact that he's with the ones right now. So I like I was telling you before the show, I'm going to go ahead and pre-write the story of Will Howard being named the starter. However, I will also tell you I've rewritten the story before for other quarterbacks, and Ryan Day has never, when there's been any kind of quarterback battle, has never named a starter before the second scrimmage. And so we are coming up. Tomorrow is the 15th. He named C.J. Stroud the starter on the 21st of August. He named Justin Fields the starter on the 19th of August. So if Ryan Day breaks character and names Will Howard the starter or Devin Brown the starter tomorrow, that would be a bit of a surprise. However, after what they went through last year, I also have no doubt that he wants to name a starter as soon as possible. And if he feels like they can, he will. Last year I was fully expecting him to name the starter at this point. And it went into 2 or 3 weeks of the season. We anticipate it, but he has his own timelines, even when it's clearly obvious that somebody is the starter, like with Justin Fields. It was clearly he took every single rep with the ones for the first 2+ weeks of camp. It was clear, but he still waited until after that second scrimmage before he said anything.
Steve, why am I not surprised that Tony gave us the exact date in which Ryan Day named his last couple starting quarterbacks?
Well, it just makes sense. I think when you think about it, we talked a little bit off before we started about how they have 2 Saturday scrimmages, one last Saturday, one this coming Saturday. And it just makes sense that after the second one and you're 2 weeks out from the first game, that's the natural time to do it, pare down the reps and give everybody a role. I mean, you got 5 quarterbacks, and they need to give these guys roles for what they're going to be doing during practice going forward. And it is a luxury to carry 5 quarterbacks, certainly, in case somebody were to get hurt. You do have some options to throw somebody else in there. So I do think it will be Will Howard. The times that we watched, he was probably the most consistent. I think Devin Brown, by some accounts, did have a pretty good scrimmage last week. I don't have many or any details beyond just some abstract concepts that he played pretty well. And the offensive line was still kind of beset by some virus issues last weekend. But beyond that, nothing extraordinary that we heard came out of that. So I'm of a belief that things in motion will continue in motion, and that's Will Howard. He seemed to be the one closest ready to produce this season when we saw them. So that's my story, and that's what I'm sticking with until somebody can prove otherwise. I can't imagine he's going to get unseated as the quarterback of this team.
So with 3 cupcakes to start the season, is there any negative to saying we're playing 2 quarterbacks for week 1? We'll commit to that week 1 publicly, maybe even thinking this is going to be the approach maybe for 2 games or for 3 games. You give the backup quarterback valuable playing time, and you let these guys, and you know who Will Howard is. We don't know who he is with Ohio State complementary pieces around him, but we know who he is as a starting quarterback for 2.5 years in big-time college football. But let's say Julian Sayen's the next guy, or Devin Brown's the next guy. Especially with Devin Brown not being able to get that full audition that we anticipated last season, let him play. Or is that naturally going to transpire because you're up 50-0?
I think what's going to happen is when Ryan Day names his starter, he will say, but so-and-so is still going to play. We're going to need more than one, and he's going to incorporate that as well. But what you're talking about, Mark, is the norm. Like it's what you do early in the season when you've got a schedule like this. It's what they've always done, what teams have always done. You play the backup to get him some reps in games where you know there's the outcome isn't in doubt. That helps them in case there's an emergency situation later on. And so, yeah, I fully expect him to, let's just assume he's going to name Will Howard the starter. In the next breath, he's going to say, but Devin Brown's going to play, and we're going to need him to play. And you're right, he does not have a ton of experience despite the playing time that he got last year. So much of that is you're the change of pace guy. You come in and you'll help the run game. He needs to come in and be able to throw the ball around like he does in practice, frankly, and get that kind of experience and get that kind of comfort level in a real game. As much as you can call these games real games, I mean, they count in standings, so I guess they're real, but they're not the real kind of test that will come down the road. And you don't want the first time he's out there in that kind of situation to be against somebody legitimate. And you know, we don't know what would have happened if he stayed healthy against Missouri last year, but that's kind of the example. Like the first time he gets thrust into anything, it's that kind of game, and so it's important to get these guys both snaps and both throws, frankly, because there are too many times where the backup, or the number of throws for the backup or the third guy has been too few over the years at times for Ohio State.
So my point is more to the fact, are they going to give Devin Brown those reps when it's 45-7 or when it's 0-0 on the third drive of the game? Or maybe they're down 3-0. And even though it is Akron and it's not Iowa, that it's just a different feel to the game at that point.
Yeah, I think you're not going to see the third series of the game. I think it's Howard's team. I think Howard will be in there, until he either falters or they're up 28-0. And I think that, the other guys are just going to have to accept the fact that it's his team, and they will get work around the edges, when those times come. I mean, if you're up 21-0 in the second quarter, sure. Maybe put somebody in for a series just to see how it goes. But I do believe you got to find a way to get Julian Sayen some throws in here somewhere as well in live action in one of these first or two of these first 3 games. And, I just think that he's a guy that's got to get his feet wet. Brown's at least played a little bit here and there. I think Sayen is a guy that if they feel like can help him this year, that they get him in there and get him a few snaps here or there. But I believe that it's Howard's team, and he's got to take, that's the most important thing, is building a rhythm and a rapport with him and the receivers and the offensive line and getting it down in those first 3 games. Because after that, I mean, gradually the challenges get tougher. Michigan State on the road, Iowa at home, at Oregon. It doesn't get any tougher than that. So you got to be ready for weeks 4, 5, and 6, or you've done your team a complete disservice if you're not ready by the end of game 3.
Wayne Taylor dropping by. Wayne, thank you so much for the contribution. We appreciate you being here. Buckeyes Live on a Wednesday, as it typically is, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. However, we sometimes have to reschedule the show, but we are always here at some point during the week. So please subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. Wayne, again, thank you so much for that.
Wayne asked a question there with Ryan Day saying the freshman running backs will play. Do you think both of them will burn their red shirt? Absolutely.
Oh,
both
yeah.
of those guys
No
are burning their red shirt this year. You got 4 scholarship running backs. And we were just talking about who's playing in the fourth quarter of blowouts or who's going to get those reps in the blowouts. Like that has to be your 2 true freshman running backs, because you don't want Quinshon Judkins out there. You don't want Travion Henderson out there in the fourth quarter. So those are the 2 guys that are going to carry you through a lot of the ends of games because they have to. And they both played well in camp. And talking with Sam Williams-Dixon and James Peoples, we got to talk to them both a week or so ago. And you could just the 5 practices that we got to see, you could see the growth in Sam Williams-Dixon just in those 5 practices. And James Peoples has been pretty much outstanding from the get-go. So those 2 guys are definitely going to play. And as I mentioned there, like I was trying to think who's the last like 5th-year senior running back, and it may have been DeMario McCall, who then eventually moved to corner. Like Eddie George. I mean, you go way back for some of those guys, but it's not something that exists really at Ohio State anymore. There's no point in doing that because you're not going to get that 5th year out of them. Like redshirting Dallin Hayden last year, how'd that go for him?
It didn't. Did a favor. Where'd he end up?
Colorado.
Did Prime a favor on that one.
And their number 1 running back immediately transferred when Hayden came in and went to Kansas State, Dylan Edwards.
Yeah.
So, yes, musical chairs across college football, of course. All right, folks, I guess we will go right into the probable 2 deep roster. Dave Biddle of 247 Sports on Bucknuts displayed a depth chart, Steve. So I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, I'm going to send you guys the link just in case you haven't seen it. Just let's see. Yeah, you've got it up on the screen, I guess. Obviously the quarterback position, we've delved into that. At running back, he's got Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins, which makes sense. And I don't know if it'll be a territorial thing where they just start Henderson every week since he's the guy from the program, or if Carlos Lachlan and Chip Kelly and Ryan Day will look at the body of work each week and say, this is Quinshon Judkins' week to start. And honestly, starting is, everybody makes a deal about it, but the important thing is producing. And I think you're going to get into some games where both guys have gotten some first half carries to see which guy's got the rhythm, which guy has got the ability to make some things happen against the opposing defense. And then the second half, it could be a case where they go where whoever's done better in the first half gets 3/4 of the reps in the second half, and that's how the game ends. So starting is one thing, finishing is an entirely different thing. And I wonder if Quinshon Judkins, just because of his durability, will be that finisher, will be that punishing guy who puts teams away. Dave doesn't mention Sam Williams-Dixon in there as a backup with James Peoples, but I fully expect Sam Williams-Dixon to also play. He was impressive to me. I don't think Peoples or Williams-Dixon looked like they were freshmen the 3 or 4 days I got to see, and I don't think they backed down from the challenge one bit. And that isn't to say that they're not freshmen and they're not going to fumble and they're not going to take a step the wrong way and create a broken play, or something stupid's going to happen. I mean, it's just human nature. The more reps you get, the more, the better you are at execution. But so, yeah, I see all four of these guys playing, and I think that Henderson and Judkins are going to be given every chance to put their imprint on each game this season. And, whichever guy, grabs that brass ring on a given week, that's the guy that's going to get rewarded, I think.
I will just say Travion Henderson has started every game that he's been healthy at Ohio State since like the second or third game of his career as a freshman. So once he established himself and he's been healthy enough, he started. But yeah, I'm with Steve. If you start Quinchon, I don't think that means anything to these guys. And they may want to just do that right away, just to like kind of just break the seal on somebody other than Travion starting, just so you can, if it happens throughout the season. But I'm expecting both guys to get between like 12 and 17 carries a game, and they're both, I think, going to be very similar in numbers. So, I don't consider one of them a backup. There are positions on this team where I don't consider somebody a backup to somebody else because they're both going to be needed. Like, CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles. Sonny Styles has been with the ones. Is CJ Hicks the backup? Maybe, but he's got a role in other things as well. So this is just, two co-starters, good problem to have. And I do wonder how often we'll see them together in the backfield because I don't think it'll be something that we talk about and it's like we never see it. I do think we'll see it this year.
Yeah. He scrolls on down, goes right into the offensive line, and Donovan Jackson, obviously, at left guard, and Josh Simmons at left tackle. He's got Seth McLaughlin at center. His right guard is Tegra Shabola or Carson Hinsman, and then the right tackle is Josh Fryer. I think all that makes sense to me. I think, and this is just kind of me reading between the tea leaves and the lines here, two things in that battle at right guard that kind of stood out to me. One is Carson Hinsman was an Iron Buckeye, and that really carries a lot of weight. He's one of 10 players on the team that were an Iron Buckeye in the offseason program, according to Mickey Marotti. So that's one feather in his cap. And the other one, I believe Ryan Day was asked directly about Tegra Shabola and kind of where things are at with him. He said, well, in paraphrasing, he said, yeah, he's got the size, he's got the athletic ability, but you have to do it on a consistent day in and day out basis. And that's carrying out your assignment, knowing your assignment, mastering your assignment, getting the job done. And you just kind of read between the lines there that maybe there's been a little bit of a disconnect at times with Tegra. And again, this is overly simplistic, maybe not knowing his assignment on a particular play, not executing it perfectly, whatever it might be. But it just seemed and felt like Carson had just the slightest of edges, even though he has a year less in the program than Tegra Shabola. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Shabola's in his third year. Well, what is Hinsman? Hinsman's in his third year. Maybe they're both in the third year. I don't know. So to me, that's interesting. As far as the backups at all these spots, I don't look at it as left and right, and I don't think they do either. I think that if something were to happen to one of the tackles, that possibly George Fitzpatrick might be the first guy in, then Zen Mahalski, then maybe Luke Montgomery, who's also repping at guard. That seems to me to be the pecking order there. And certainly we've kind of laid out what the pecking order is there at guard. To a degree, Austin Sierraveld maybe also in that picture, but he's a down the line guy to me. I think you've got, let's say you play Hinsman, you got Shabola and Montgomery who would play, 8 series before Sierraveld ever got on the field. So just as an example. So I don't look at the left and right thing, and I don't think the coaches do either. They're going to put the best player, and they're cross-training these guys left and right, and they're going to put the best player on the field. And I think the pecking order seems clear to me, even if it's not to Justin Fry and and Ryan Day and Chip Kelly. But, that's kind of my reading between the tea leaves on that.
It would be much clearer if they weren't dealing with the virus that they've dealt with throughout the first 2 weeks of camp. But I'm with Steve. I think it's going to be Carson Hinsman at right guard. And it's been interesting. The other interesting aspect of this is that Luke Montgomery has been the backup center in all of this, and that they're trying to me, it looks like they're really trying to make him the backup center and not having to worry about Carson Hinsman playing right guard. If something happens to Seth McLaughlin, now we got to move Carson over, and now you've got to also bring in somebody new at right guard. So looks like they're just trying to make it so if something happens, they can just plug in one person and everybody else just keeps doing what they're doing. And you put all this experience around a second-year guy like Luke Montgomery, who is a tremendous athlete for an offensive lineman, as a defensive end and tight end in his first couple of years in high school, AAU basketball player. So he's got the athleticism that they like. And I think it's been an interesting transition for him to center. And he's embraced that, but can play essentially all 5 positions for Ohio State, which is a nice swing guy to have there. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm still waiting to see who the number 3 tackle is completely. And honestly, it may end up being Shabola or Montgomery if things go wonky, but they're also really, really working hard on getting George Fitzpatrick ready for that.
Yeah. Wide receivers, I think it's pretty clear. Emeka Egbuka, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate are the top 3. Brandon Ennis has had a really good start to preseason camp after missing the spring due to an injury, and I think he's number 4. And then I think it is wide open for 5, 6, 7 after that. He lists Bryson Rogers, redshirt freshman, Mylan Graham, the late enrolling true freshman, Demarion Witten, who was recruited theoretically as a tight end, 6'4", 215, true freshman. He's been repping with the wide receivers. Jaden Ballard, who's in like his 4th year and has really, never had much of an opportunity on offense. And he does not list Kojo Antwi, but he is also repping at wide receiver as well. But, zone 6, a little bit of a different look. No Marvin Harrison Jr. Emeka Egbuka is the only known commodity, although Jeremiah Smith, number 1 overall prospect in the country, and coming off an incredible spring showing as a freshman, looks like he's going to be right in there. And Tate really started preseason camp strong, Tony. I liked really in the few practices I got to see. I like Tate. You probably have seen all 5 of the open practices. I only got to 3 of the 5 because I had family stuff going on the other 2 days. But that seems to be a pretty solid group right there. And I like that they're cross training guys at different spots. So you can't just say, Mac is going to always line up in the slot, or Jeremiah is always going to line up at split end, or Tate's always going to line up at flanker. Seems like they're cross-training at different spots, and that can pay huge dividends as well.
Yeah, Emeka and Carnell Tate can play any of the 3 receiver positions, and they did it last year. So you can move those guys around, just like they did with Marvin Harrison last year, who I think played about a third of his snaps in the slot, and you move guys around, you try to find the matchups that you want. But yeah, Tate has been fantastic, and we got to talk to him last week, and he said, he's just looking forward to showing what he can do and talking trash along with it. So he's not a quiet guy, and he knows, like, people are talking about Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, even though people aren't really talking about Emeka Egbuka. He knows he's like 3rd in the pecking order of media attention. But I do wonder, like, if you opened up the Big Ten wide receivers to a Big Ten draft, Carnell Tate's not lasting much past 5 or 6 in the draft, and he might not make it that far.
Yeah. Scrolling down tight end, G. Scott Jr., 5th-year senior, 6'3", 243, sat behind Cade Stover the last 2 years, and it looks like it's his time. But not, as Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friend. I like G. He's one of the spiritual leaders of the team. But again, consistency. He's got to do it on an every down, every day, every play, every game basis. And that's a big hurdle, I think, for him and any of these guys. Will Kazmarek comes in from Ohio University, big step up in class, obviously going from the Mid-American to the Big Ten. He caught over 20 passes each of his first 2 years. Will he be able to generate much in the terms of catching passes in the Big Ten? Jelani Thurman, great pass catching tight end. Can he master the rest of the job, which is blocking? Patrick Gerd, I'm going to say walk-on, probably been awarded a scholarship. Ryan Day won't tell us what walk-ons have scholarships because that's an important state secret to keep hidden from everybody. And then Bennett Chrisman, he's not listed, coming off the year suspension for the performance-enhancing drugs or whatever it was that kept him out last year. He says an inadvertent thing that he took. You could make the case that G. Scott's not the best pass catcher and he's not the best blocker, but he might be the best all-around tight end. I would think Thurman and Christman are probably the best pass catchers based on what I've seen. I would say Kazmarek and Gerd are probably the best blockers. So you got 5 guys, and I think on any given play, any of those 5 could be on the field. And I'm giving Bennett Christman a little bit more benefit of the doubt than I think anybody else is. But when I see him in practice going down the middle of the field, he makes plays. So you've been there, Tony, as I said, 2 more practices than I have. What's your thought on the tight end position? And am I selling G a little bit short, or is he going to be the every down guy?
Well, I think he's going to be the every down guy 60% of the time. Will Kazmarek is going to be in there as well because those have been the 2 guys that have been running with the 1s and the 2s. And it's been Jelani Thurman, Patrick Gerd, everybody else running with the 2s, 3s, and so on. Jelani's had some good moments, but like Ryan Day was asked about him last week or the week before, and it was like one of the most critical answers and honest answers that Ryan Day has given about a player in terms of what he still needs to do and what he's not doing yet. It's the consistency. It's, yes, there might be a nice catch or a nice drive, but there was a missed block or there's just a missed assignment. So like he's still, to me, like everybody likes to talk about him, but if you can't trust a player on every single snap, you're not going to see him on very many snaps because in a game, any play can cost you it can be critical, and you have to be able to trust those guys. I think they trust G. Scott and Will Kazmarek the most right now, and I think you'll see those 2 guys in 12 personnel. But I do think there'll be times where it's Will in there and G. Scott's on the sideline. Likewise, there'll be times when it's G. Scott out there and Will Kazmarek's on the sideline. It's been a steep climb for Kazmarek to move from Ohio to Ohio State, and I think it caught him off guard a little bit in the spring. But now he's acclimated to what it is to play at Ohio State. I think he's starting to pick up speed in camp. And I think we talked to Keenan Bailey and the tight ends next week, and I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of echo that sentiment with Will Kazmarek.
Hey, Tony, I set up all the offensive positions. If Mark's going to scroll down to the defense, do you want to set him up and I can provide
sure
kind of change up here?
Yeah, and really, this is going to be pretty easy because
pretty cut and dry.
I've heard of those 2 guys.
Yeah, just go watch a show from last year. But yeah, I mean, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau. I think the key here is getting Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson playing every playing every quarter, essentially, like being part of a true rotation. And we saw Kenyatta Jackson go down and practice last week with a foot ankle type of thing. He didn't leave, like he wasn't carried off or anything, but he had to get retaped and then he was done practicing. But that happens all the time in camp, so I wouldn't worry too much about it right now. I haven't heard anything about that being any worse than it is. But those 2 guys are going to be Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau are the foundation of the defensive line. And then you need to get contributions from everybody else there because it can't just be those 2 guys carrying this thing again.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Kenyatta Jackson, to me, has got star potential written all over him. I mean, he looks like coming out of Central Casting. He's a National Football League defensive end, with that huge frame and, long wingspan and everything else. And I know I'm keeping track of Jim Knowles does the silver bullet of the day, and I believe Kenyatta has now won it at least once or twice here in the early stretch. She picks out a defensive player from practice every day and makes a point to put on social media that this was our best defensive player of the day. And you can generally figure out who's going to play on defense just by who is being selected. And Kenyatta Jackson was certainly I think he's done it twice now through the first 11 days. Jermaine Matthews, if you remember, Tony, last week ago Sunday, had the pick six and a sack in a span of about 5 plays. And lo and behold, when the winner for day 4 came out, it was Jermaine Matthews. So it's not hard on a given day to go to practice and see who's going to win that award. Usually it's the guy whose name gets called. They, honest to goodness, have a PA guy. One of the program assistants will tell you what happens pretty much on every play. So we don't even need to go to practice, Tony. We could stand outside and just chart who gets announced. Sack Jack Sawyer, is what you'll hear. And, you'll in this instance, you hear that a lot. So same with Kenyatta. And I want to see JT had the one game against Penn State, which was arguably one of, if not the single greatest game any Ohio State defensive player ever had. I mean, you could say Chris Spielman had 29 tackles against Michigan in a game that they lost in 1986, and Jamie Morris ran for 200 yards that day. But we can argue all that till the end of time. But
get off the field.
Yeah, JT Tuimoloau in a win, that's a way to put it, had as good and he had his fingerprints on the victory. I mean, it was like in the AP story of the game, the first words in the story were JT Tuimoloau, kind of like that game they had at Michigan State, and it was the punter. Drew Chrisman was the first 2 words in the AP game story that day because the punter won them the game, and he was interviewed on network television after the game. Kind of interesting, but So those are our long and short thoughts on the defensive end position. Again, these guys got to bring the goods. Don't tell me about the pain. Show me the baby, guys. It's the moving sidewalk is ending. Do you want to be a first-round player? Look down.
The one anecdote about Drew Chrisman in that game, he was also brought to the post-game interview with all of us, and he's like, I didn't even realize this stuff happened. Like, he had no clue that there was like post-game room, post-game interviews.
I wondered where those guys went. Where were they going? Yeah.
So yes, that was a fantastic.
We always have to wait for them on the bus. Everybody else is ready to go, and those guys are the last ones to take their shower. What's going on?
It's like when Dorothy steps out of black and white and into colors. Like, what in the world? Moving to defensive tackle, then obviously Tyleik Williams, Ty Hamilton started 7 of their games last year, splitting time with Mike Hall. So you essentially have 2 starters returning. And I agree with the backups here. Caden McDonald, Hero Canoe. Those 2 guys have been the 2 guys basically have been with the 1s and the 2s throughout camp when one of those guys is sitting. Hero Canoe has been the 3 tech behind Tyleik Williams, Caden McDonald, the nose tackle behind Ty Hamilton. But all of those guys can play both positions. Larry Johnson wants them to be able to do that. I think it's key to find somebody else, a 5th and a 6th. Now, Larry Johnson was effusive in his praise of Jason Moore back in the spring, and he's been mostly with the 3s at this point. Can he get up into there? Do they even need do they need more than 4? Because, Steve, they're going to play defensive ends inside as well with the Rushman package. There'll be times where JT Tuimoloau or Jack Sawyer or Caden Curry are playing inside, which eliminates the need for a defensive tackle in there. So I think they want more. I'm not sure how readily available a 5th tackle is going to be, whether, Jason Moore, Will Smith Jr., who we didn't get to see last year, Taiwan Malone. I'm not sure if that's happening this year. I wouldn't expect anything from Eric Mensah, the true freshman. So the 4 here I like, but also Caden McDonald and Hero Canoe have not really done much yet. There's excitement about them. Caden McDonald had an okay freshman year, but now you're asking them to be in a rotation, which they really haven't done fully. And so I think that's something to watch as well.
Yeah, there are some people who think Tyreek Williams could be a first-round NFL draft pick at 6'3", 327. And I'm here for that. If he plays up to that capability, then they are going to be an extremely difficult team to beat, I think, this year. And Ty Hamilton is one of the unsung heroes, I think, of the defense as well. Does a lot of that dirty work inside. So, Ty Hamilton, somebody asked me if you had a dark horse, somebody who could win all Big Ten honors, I'd say Ty Hamilton, because he's gonna do a lot of things, I think, for this defense that help them win, and maybe opposing coaches will recognize that, even if maybe he doesn't have huge numbers with tackles and the media may not catch on to him. Some young guys, Jason Moore, Will Smith Jr. has been banged up and really started to kind of get healthy in the spring and started to do a couple things. Tony, Edric Houston, is he more of an edge player, I believe, as opposed to being a tackle? I thought Edric in one of the practices seemed to do pretty well. Going back on defensive end, I think maybe he's a guy, a true freshman. But this is the whole same premise. You're losing probably 15 of your 22 starters off this team will be gone. And it's imperative that you get some youngins ready to go for 2025. And I think Jason Moore kind of fits that bill. And, Edric Houston at defensive end kind of fits that bill. Eric Mensah is a humongous person. And I don't want to discount that he's not going to help him this year, but I think he's a guy in the plan, certainly for the future. But I like the present and the future at defensive tackle. That's my thoughts on that.
And then moving to linebacker again, Mike linebacker, middle linebacker, Cody Simon is the leader of the defense. He's the quarterback of all of this. Confidence is very, very high in him. I think the interesting battle between Gabe Powers and Arvell Reese, and Dave's got it as an or here. I think that or has it wasn't there before camp, but I think it's starting to appear. They really, really like Arvell Reese, and I think he was one of the silver bullets of the day, recently. And he's the guy Jim Knowles cannot speak highly enough of him. Just all of the athleticism and trying to find ways to use him. I know last year he talked about, he could be somebody in that jack role. The jack is not a thing with this defense this year, as Knowles told us recently. If I put that in there, I have to take somebody else off, and there's too many good players to take off the field to put that on there. So this is a situation where Gabe Powers, Arvell Reese, I'm fascinated to see how much those two guys play, because again, Cody Simon has had injuries in his past. He had a bad shoulder a couple of years ago. It's kind of like the backup quarterback. You want to get the backup quarterback of your defense reps as well, in case something happens. And I think they do need to figure out exactly who the backup is. I think right now I'd still give the edge to Gabe Powers, but it's been interesting to watch Arvell Reese come on and earn some praise from his coaches.
Yep. Peyton Pierce just lost his black stripe too. So although he may factor more at the outside linebacker spot, but he's another guy that I've heard nothing but good things about his work in preseason camp. So maybe special teams. Certainly Arvell Reese will be on special teams. He kind of got dinged up, I think, on special teams last year that kind of put a damper on his season. I don't know what to say about that. Tony, do you think there's any chance that they play Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks together with one of them as the middle linebacker and take Cody Simon? Kind of the same premise as I mentioned on the offensive line, that those are your three best linebackers, and you will simply rotate them between the two spots. And James Laurinaitis has talked a lot about cross-training everybody at middle and outside will linebacker. Do you think that's a possibility, or what do you think, I suppose?
Well, and that's what I'm wondering with those two, because when you play Will at Ohio State, you can also play Mike. Like there's some cross training there. They want it to be interchangeable, but Sonny Styles coming from safety to Will linebacker, do you want to give him that much to do? And CJ Hicks still trying to get the Will linebacker position down and be the kind of read and react guy. And see somebody that can even do the middle linebacker stuff. But also it's it's easy to imagine them together on a passing down type of thing with their athleticism, their ability to cover ground. I just don't know how comfortable they are, and maybe that's a good question for Knowles when we talk to him tomorrow, how comfortable they would be just having those two guys out there without a middle linebacker per se making the calls and getting everybody right, getting the defensive line right. So I think it was James Laurinaitis talking about Gabe Powers, how in talking about him in the position as a whole, he said, you have to make sure everybody is right. Whereas right now, Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks are more concerned about themselves being right. And so they may not have the wherewithal right now to make sure everybody else is right. So that may be a down the road thing. It may be a next year thing as well. But I do think you can see Sonny Styles at Sam, CJ Hicks at Will, and then a middle linebacker when they're going with their 3 linebacker sets. That will happen, and it gives them some flexibility. But I think with those two, Sonny's been with the ones that we've seen. He was with the 2s in the spring, which was understandable. He's gotten better. He's talking to him about his footwork and being more patient and not overstepping and just staying in his gaps. That's been a learning process for him. CJ Hicks talks like he's excited about his opportunity this year and said they don't care who starts. They talk about it all the time. Him and Sonny, they talk about it. They don't care who starts as long as they both eat, they'll be happy. And they both believe that CJ said it like, we're basically you're getting the same guy. So when say Sonny's tired and he wants to come out, I go in. When I'm tired, I'll go out. Sonny will come in, and you're getting basically the same guy to do the same job.
Yeah, I want to see how it all works in principle. Jim Knowles spoke right at the beginning of camp, and I kind of was a little bit coy with him. I said, you can say what you want today about how this is all going to go, but once Ohio State gets into games 1, 2, and 3, it's going to be readily apparent how these guys are used. Is Sonny Styles used for every meaningful play, and then Hicks just comes in when the score is 21-0, or does Hicks come in a 1st and 10 situation where they're going to run the football, and then Sonny Styles comes in on 3rd and 10 where they're going to throw the football, and he's got that experience from safety being a cover guy? It'd be much easier for him as he was having to play at times last year the nickel safety trying to cover a guy in the slot, and he did the best he could with it, although he gave up a few plays here and there. Well, it's going to be a lot easier, I think, on him this year, trying to cover the running back out of the backfield or the tight end releasing, down the middle of the field or whatever. I think those are going to be easier assignments for him and more up his alley. So I'm interested to see how this goes. And again, 2 really, really good players. And I kind of consider Hicks to be the 12th starter maybe on this defense, because I think he could play a starter's number of plays, particularly, let's say, if Styles goes out for a game, then you've got Hicks and he plays the whole game, and that's how it goes, or vice versa. So, I think it's a good situation for him to have.
And his impact could be felt by the plays that he makes, not necessarily the plays that he's in on. Like the snaps, he may have a higher percentage of plays made with the snaps, basically, because they are going to be attacking more with the wills. And we saw one of the practices, CJ Hicks was on the edge, basically on the line of scrimmage. And Jim Knowles said they want to be more aggressive with those 2 guys. And it's a process that he's implemented over his time, whether it's Western Michigan or Oklahoma State or Duke, where you do more and more as you have guys who are older and older and who are more comfortable doing it. So they're going to get more aggressive there. And really that's CJ Hicks's best quality. So let's see if that actually comes through on the field. Moving to corner, because again, this one is also pretty cut and dry. Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosun, arguably the best duo in the nation. Jermaine Matthews would be starting at, 96% of the schools around the nation at either, probably 100% at either nickel or corner. Like there would be a spot for him somewhere. And he's the backup to Jordan Hancock in the slot. I do wonder, though, is he still the number 3 corner, or is that? I assume that he is, but he hasn't played outside. Like, he's just been inside. He's been playing nickel, but I think they're pretty confident that they can just move him outside if need be. But Calvin Simpson-Hunt has been fantastic in camp. He's given up some ridiculous catches made by ridiculous receivers. Some really, really impressive plays have come against him, but he's right there. And there are some plays where he's batting the ball away. And we saw Jaden Ballard still haul it in with one hand. Like, the coverage has been there. Aaron Scott's been picking it up more and more as he's come on. You know, Bryce West still working his way. He was injured in the spring, so he's coming along. Miles Lockhart as well. But yeah, it's a pretty good crew. Tim Walton loves the depth. He said he's working on getting 5 guys that can play. I'm just wondering, Steve, if they come to a situation where they're going to be there's some rotation at corner, because Jermaine Matthews makes plays. That's what he does. And I just wonder how much we see of him, because he can rotate 2 different spots for you, or 3 different spots if you're going to consider both outside corners and coming in for Jordan Hancock at times.
Yeah, you think about today's game and all the passes that are thrown and all the routes that are run, these corners really blow themselves out. And I think that Matthews is a guy who's going to get to play, I would think, at a minimum 25 to 30% of the snaps, just the way it's going to work out. And I do view him as the 4th corner. I think Calvin Simpson-Hunt is going to get to play 10, 15% of the snaps as well, as a backup outside. And I think, again, this is an embarrassment of riches here. Denzel Burke, I looked at 4 mock drafts, and he was in the first round on 3 of them. And he can play his way up to the middle of the first round if he has a great, great senior year for Ohio State. And I think for him, taking the next step is, okay, you've deflected the pass. You've shown you can master that. Now you need to intercept the pass and return the pass. And I think that is what kind of the final finishing step for Denzel Burke to do. If he comes back with 4, 5, 6 interceptions, he could win the Jim Thorpe Award possibly. So to me, he's a guy that can be in that rarefied air up there if he can do that. Davison Igbinosun, I think he's rock solid. I know scrolling on down, Dave mentions the slot corner position, and that's certainly Jordan Hancock with Jermaine Matthews backing him up. And Lorenzo Styles Jr., is a guy he's kind of been banged up at times, and I think in preseason camp he's still coming off a little bit of an injury. Somebody earlier asked about injuries, and Tony, in my way of thinking, other than the virus on the offensive line and Lorenzo Styles Jr., I can't think of anybody that we know of, and maybe tomorrow we'll find out a little bit more, that has missed appreciable time due to injuries. But hopefully Lorenzo can be a force for this defense and on special teams. Defense when given the chance, and on special teams as well.
And talking to him back in the spring, he would love to be involved in kick returns, which we have not seen any of so far in camp. Moving to safety, my biggest question here is Jalen McClain and whether or not he will be able to move Malik Hartford to strong safety and Jalen McClain is the backup behind Caleb Downs, or if they're comfortable having Malik Hartford be the backup for both Downs and Ransom, so should somebody go down. But when they want to play multiple guys, or when they want to play the backups, where do they fit in? Now, Jalen McClain has been mostly with the 3s, but Steve, you mentioned the PA announcer. I was getting ready for interviews one day, and I heard the Jalen McClain interception. That was the day he got his black stripe removed as well. So he's one of the earliest guys to get the black stripe removed in this class. He was fantastic in the spring, but we've seen Malik Hartford and Jaden Bonsu with the 2s throughout most of camp. And again, we haven't been there in almost a week now, so maybe there's something changed, or maybe Jalen McClain has been able to work his way in there. But again, the starting duo is arguably the best in the nation. Malik Hartford would be a comfortable starter this year if one of Downs or Ransom hadn't, decided to be a Buckeye or stay a Buckeye, and they'd feel pretty good about that. Jaden Bonsu had a strong spring, played a bunch because Lathan Ransom was out, so that helped. So I think it's a pretty good crew. I just have a question about Jalen McClain and where he fits in, and could he move Malik Hartford over to strong safety?
Yeah, Downs was the SEC Freshman of the Year, as Dave lists here, led Alabama in tackles as a true freshman, helped lead that team SEC championship, college football playoff. So he's accomplished. He's been there. He's done that. And certainly that cliche stands for Lathan Ransom. Been there, done that. Been through so many injury issues in his career. And, I think he's a possibility to be the Block O jersey guy. I did a story about that as well on our site. I gave 10 seniors kind of a run at that Block O jersey. I left out Cody Simon. So really, there could be 11 of them that could be in consideration for that. But certainly Ransom is a guy that's been through the ringer. Hartford, I look at this as he's the number 3 safety, and then probably, as you say, Bonsu, and then McClain. And McClain is a comer, no doubt about it. Dog going to bite you, he's going to bite you as a pup. And as our friend Coop would have said. So they're not saying boo, they're saying Coop. I think. Sometimes they were saying boo. But at any rate, Jalen McClain, to me, is a guy maybe as early next year that's going to be in the mix. I mean, you hope and you believe that Downs will return for a third year in college at Ohio State next year without another transfer. But you never know in this day and age. But he'd be the backbone of the defense, certainly coming back next year. Downs would, and a potential All-American this year. So we'll see how it all shakes out.
Mark, would you like to have anything to say?
Yeah, we kind of excluded you from your own show for the last 30 minutes. You were able
that's quite all right. This is
to
where
pay your bills and able to, catch up on your emails. And
none of that. No, I was locked in on this because this is where, after I know the names, the positions, the stats, and I can recall about 3 or 4 plays from most of these guys, but this is where I can then, after I start watching week 1, I'm like, well, that's right. Tony said to look out for that. Oh, that's right. Steve said that. I didn't know that before. No, this is where it all comes back. So this was awesome. I love the breakdown on the positions, because that is, I hope everybody took that in, because that was great stuff to go in depth on each position, because absolutely, I can only know so much. And when you guys supply that kind of background, then it makes these games so much more enjoyable to watch. And I know so much more than just reading magazines.
Well, they've had 12 practices today. I think it's 13 maybe today. And Tony got to go to 5 of them. I got to go to 3 of them. So we can't sit here and be definitive inside the head of every position coach and say, this is what this person thinks of this person. But based on what we were able to observe individually, going to those practices, I think we've got a reasonably good hold on where things are headed. So,
yeah, and when we have questions, we've said it. So yeah, I feel pretty good about what we've seen and what we know and what we don't know. And
we're going to find out a lot more tomorrow with Coach Day, Coach Kelly, and Coach Knowles all taking turns in the hot seat. I'll probably get 20 minutes with Day, and probably 15 minutes with each coordinator as well. So,
Josh Petty, offensive tackle, committed to Georgia Tech, so he was lost. And then the big announcement coming up at Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Everybody set your watches. I know, Steve, you are fully committed on these commitment watches to make sure that you don't miss a round of golf or anything, because you got to be there when the 17-year-old commits or makes his first commitment, at least. But it's David Sanders, of course. Ohio State, Tennessee, Georgia, Nebraska. I'm understanding Tennessee's a slight lean, but Ohio State's got a good shot.
Yeah, I think Tennessee's the 2-1 betting favorite, or maybe even 8-5 at this point. I don't know, but I have a hard time believing Ohio State's going to come away with David Sanders at this point. I mean, they've made every bid that they could possibly make with NIL and playing time. I mean, I think Josh Simmons is headed to the NFL after this season. That opens one tackle spot. For some reason, the roster lists Fryer as a 1-year remaining guy. I thought he had 2 years left, but maybe he'll be gone too. I guess I need to investigate that a little bit more. But there's an opportunity to play a tackle at Ohio State next year if you're the best. And, so if he goes elsewhere, then, as my old high school basketball coach said to a kid who quit the team at halftime and walked out the door, he says, well, hey, good luck to you. So that's kind of my thought. These guys go elsewhere. Well, hey, good luck to you.
I didn't realize you played basketball with Kayvon Pope.
Well, hey, good luck to you. Yeah, this kid, he was honestly, how you wear a jacket and tie to the game. The coaches are huddling over in the hallway, getting the strategy down to come in and talk to the team. They give the kid 2 minutes. He already had his uniform off and his shirt and was putting his tie on, was grabbing his jacket. And they go, hey, man, where are you going? He goes, I'm out, man. I can't do this anymore. He goes, well, hey, man, good luck to you.
Couldn't waste another 45 minutes of his life, could he?
Nope,
to
he was
sit through
done.
that second half.
I played in the first half, wasn't going to play in the second half. He was gone.
One note on the AP poll that was released this week, I understand that somebody else did this research for me, so I'll credit whomever out there. 18 times Ohio State has been ranked number 1 or 2 in the preseason poll and never won a national championships. So the 8 claimed national championships came from other positions within the poll, apparently.
That's crazy. Of course.
And only 11 number 1s since 1950 finished number 1.
Yeah. I know the year with Tressel in 02, I think they were like 10, 11, 12. I'm not sure what they were in 14, coming off the 2 losses to end the 13 season. Probably in that 8, 9, 10 range, I would bet. But then the world found out about Joey Bosa and Ezekiel Elliott, didn't they? So found out all about them.
They were number 5 in 2014 preseason rank.
Good.
And then they took the tumble after week 1 in the injury and the close win against Navy.
All the way down in the teens somewhere. Maybe, I don't know, did they even drop to 21 or something like that? They were way down there.
Well, after Virginia Tech, yeah.
Yeah,
they
dropped
to 22.
Yeah.
22.
Wow.
And then the Red Sea parted.
I would like to take a smidge of credit for that because I walked in the next Monday and I took off the national championship game. I took that date off of work. I marked it down. I told my boss, I want this. He said, what are you taking that off? I said, for the national championship game. And he said, Ohio State just lost. And I said, national championship game, taking it off. We're digging in on this one.
Now, how could that have not been an all hands on deck day at the mothership?
I did pretty well missing national championship games for a long, long time. I'm trying to think. I must have been off. Yeah, I was a Friday, Saturday off at that point. So, yeah, I had to work the championship games. But
yeah, the worldwide leader.
There was plenty of personnel there.
Yeah. Somebody remarked that curiously, all the schools that Paul Feinbaum has been down on in the last few weeks are all schools that ESPN curiously does not have any rights to cover their games. So, kind of a curious thing there. So,
yeah,
I'm interested.
Something there.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how much Gary Danielson likes the Big Ten again when his first game is covering Akron at Ohio State.
The Home Depot Big Ten on CBS. This is CBS.
Well, more importantly, Tony, what are you covering this week?
Well, as Steve said, we'll be on campus tomorrow talking to the head coach, the offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator. I already today have wrote about Tigger Shabola and that competition and what Ryan Day had to say about him at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Also a threw a notebook up there with some thoughts from Chip Kelly on Julian Sayin and Jordan Hancock with thoughts on himself coming back second year at nickel. And then we're dropping an episode of Buckeye Weekly here in the next couple of hours, talking about some over-unders on the Ohio State football season from listeners. They gave us some situations and some numbers, so we discussed over-unders on those, and then we'll have a second episode doing that dropping tomorrow afternoon as well. Buckeye Weekly Podcast.
Steve.
Just what Tony largely said. We'll be covering a lot of the same events here the next week or so. We'll get back in on some position group interviews next week. This was a week where they kind of shut the media out and shut out a lot of the noise, and this was a heavy work week, believe me, for this team as they are preparing. They'll move toward game prep middle of next week. Obviously, how much you're going to work on preparing to play Akron, but it's more about systems, and this is how we're going to handle this in a game, and this is how we line up, and this is what we do, and those type of things. So dress rehearsal type stuff, but we're getting there. We are hurtling toward it at the speed of light. 17 days from now, I'll be leaving my house at about 12 o'clock and maneuvering through the traffic, through my back way, different ways to get into the stadium. I always love for those early season games to get off and go down 15th Avenue where all the fraternities and sororities are, because it is just so much activity and people are outside partying in the front yard of all the fraternities and sororities. And that's when that college football is back, that, you've got all the people going crazy and getting ready for the game and everything. And then finally get down there to the stadium, get parked and go in and eat the food, whatever that is that they've got laid out. Hopefully it will not be breakfast for a 3:30 game. And then, I have my traditions. I try and shoot the pregame band show, go down and help out with the prospects on the track and all these different things. And, really looking forward to it. So, should be a fun season coming up, and looking forward to that first game, 17 days.
Folks, please like and subscribe on the way out. Tony, thank you so much for being here. Steve, you as well, of course. Track these guys on Bucknuts and Buckeye Huddle, Buckeye Weekly, and we'll see you back here next week.